because I wanted to write. I wanted to experiment with writing, and I started to put together these little vignettes, and I realized that they were sort of about me, or they were sort of about characters that I grew up with. So so that's sort of how it started. That was the genesis of how it started and evolved, and I'd say within 3 months of that I had a first draft of the script, which remained pretty close to the shooting draft that we actually stuck with.
Well, I was doing 70s at the time, and then this was the first movie I ever did, actually.
Kevin Gage was one of the main catalysts that made me want to make the movie. When I worked with Kevin on another film a year before Lightning Bug, I had never met a guy that I thought could play Earl until I met Kevin Gage.
I was flattered. He in the makeup chair we were talking, and he had recognized me then from another movie, and he asked if I would read a script of his, I believe, and it was something that he had wrote. It was about his life story growing up in Alabama and wanting to be a Hollywood special effects guy. The characters that surrounded him, it's based on his real life. He had in mind an actor for every role in the movie except the evil stepfather. And when he saw me, he says, "You're him."
Earl, no, I told you,
Hey! Don't you ever raise your fucking voice to me. I will smack the shit out of you, boy.
He wanted to write a story based on his experiences growing up. And I would go over to his house and I'd look over his shoulder as he was writing it, and he wanted it to be as honest and authentic and fearless as possible. And I remember him saying to me, there's this actor, Kevin Gage, I want to play part of Earl. There's this musician, Kevin Kinney, who is the perfect voice for this film to create an environment. And he said, would you play my mom? And I said, I'd love to.
Lightning Bug was one of those movies that I saw, I recognized Rob's name, and I was expecting, I think, something different. And so I actually picked it up based on the box art and his name. Didn't know anything about it. I knew nothing about it. Didn't read the back of the box. Took it back to my hotel room and watched it, and it was strangely not a horror film at all. And I remember about 10 minutes in, I stopped the movie and I was like, what am I watching? And then I went on IMDb. It was such a well done, like, dramatic movie that I went back and continued to watch it, and I'm glad I did.
Oh, goddamn bobcats! Ah! Shoot far! Say
When special effects people usually turn to directing, they do an easy lap. They do Leprechaun 6, they do Critters 9, they do basically Hellraiser 12. Robert told a coming-of-age story, a gothic southern tale about his own life. That is unheard of. That's a real directorial choice.
That's what Rob wanted to do since he was little, and he was just fascinated with special effects and blood and guts and gore, and he wanted to turn it into a career, which is impossible to do. Everybody would love to just move on to Hollywood and make a living in the business, and he's done it through perseverance and talent and perseverance.
As much as people love his effects work, this movie is amazing. This movie is intense. This movie is sad. This movie is tragic. This movie is beautifully acted, beautifully directed. The fact that he wrote and directed this, and it's not a schlocky horror movie, it's a true autobiographical coming-of-age story, not unlike Stand By Me, although a lot darker.
The script was amazing. And it had you know, there was an extreme realism about the movie.
Right.
And I feel like, you know, if you're reading a script from an audience standpoint and you can automatically relate to it, you know, as an audience member, you're like, fuck, this is a good movie.
For me, which is cool to watch the movie, is the directing of itself. You know, I think that a lot of people know Rob as an effects guy. That's how I knew him. You know, he's done some disgusting and disturbing, great, gnarly, disgusting, gorific things. I don't think I was expecting this movie out of him. And I think not only from the level of maturity in the movie, but how he holds back. He could have gone a lot further on things and he doesn't. For example, I think an amateurish kind of guy would have shown a lot more things that he only implies. Like, for example, there's a scene I think the kids come home and someone's been stabbed a bunch, and all you're seeing is a little of the blood splatter that's there. Like it's what he's not showing you. That level of resistance and holding back, I think, is pretty awesome.
I didn't realize this until watching the film, is that the only blood and gore you see is fake. The only time that there's real detailed violence, it's the pretend violence. The real violence, he chooses not to show.
I'll never forget, we sat down together at the lunch table on Terminator, the TV show, and he was sort of talking mildly about Dario Argento and Suspiria next to me, and I sort of, at like 18, like plucked up about Argento and all this kind of horror stuff. And after that, almost a week later, he gave me a DVD of Lightning Bug and said, you know, this is the film that I've made, and it really knocked me for six because it was the last thing I kind of expected from him, having known him for a week. And it's what led to me wanting to work for him over and over.
You know, my manager I've been with for 17 years, and he basically was like, I read the script, you need to check it out. And I read it, and I just loved it. I thought the story was awesome. And when I found it was based on Rob's life story, that's another thing that was really great. I did what I could to, get the role. I dressed up and I did the nose ring and got all gothed out and stuff.
For me, one of the most fascinating parts about Lightning Bug is that just like Rob Hall, the writer and director, I come from a very small town in Texas. And I think I preceded him by probably 10 or 12 years. So it was a little bit different, but very, very, very similar. Growing up in a town, an area where no one really understood what we were trying to do, feeling like misfits, feeling like outcasts, but yet having this burning desire to create. What I get from the film is that Rob felt exactly the same way I did. I love that someone finally put images to that.
And watching the movie, it's a heartfelt, harrowing experience, to watch Green, the main character in the film, go through such turmoil just to do what he wants to do.
Lightning Bug kind of got me going, and that was really the first anything I did, and got my SAG card on that, which was really exciting because Rob fought for me, and he didn't like fake Southern accents.
I'm fortunate enough to work with a lot of really talented actors, and I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of really talented directors, and I think I've taken a lot from good directors, and I've taken a lot from directors that were under the gun and maybe weren't so good. I've still taken things from them. I think it was a natural progression for me. I think working with actors is something that I really love to do because I really admire the process. I still have a great respect and admiration for what they do.
And when you watch this movie, I think it's really clear that you can tell that Rob was really great at working with the actors and having us, working with us to come up with our moments and, why we do certain things, and you can just tell when you're watching it, and it's really cool.
It's a lot harder than people think to get a great performance out of an actor. You can have the greatest actor in the world, but you have to lead them to get to that point. And I think that every performance in the movie is amazing. From the boyfriend to Ashley Lawrence to the two main kids, everyone in it's great and they seem real. No one seems like they're acting. I think it's one of the hardest things, specifically on a low budget. When you're working with a movie that is not in the studio kind of budgetary world, you're limited. You have to be creative. And that actually affects acting a lot more than people think. If you have 1 take, 2 takes to get something, you have to nail it. What's great about this movie for me is watching it is the performances in it are so great.
I love how Shannon plays Mrs. Duvet, and that her most aggressive moments are completely still. The way she's lying almost like a corpse and Brandon has her underlit, she is so menacing and she doesn't move a muscle.
Shannon Eubanks for Mrs. Duvet.
Shannon, literally, she had to do the scene where she was had to be really emotional, and it was a scene that we had together, and I was just so blown away by just how professional she was and how just, the emotion was right there, and she was just so intense and so amazing.
Kevin Gage's Earl scared the hell out of me when I saw this movie.
And one of my favorite parts is when he's talking about killing this guy. They're reminiscing like it's some fantastic fuzzy moment, and Kevin starts going woo and bouncing up and down like a kid.
Woo! Come on, son, bitch, what?
I've been a fan of Ashley Lawrence from the very beginning. I mean, I remember watching her in Hellraiser, and I was like, I'm in love with you. And I've actually told her I was in love with her too, to her face.
I had never experienced the region of Alabama. I was met with a great deal of warmth and southern hospitality. It's that juxtaposition that feels so dangerous. And I think at the beginning of the film, Rob shows that really well with the opening credits. It's Alabama the Beautiful, dead end, swimming cows, a beautiful rushing river, and all of this greenery, and all of these churches all lined up in a row, and each church is saying that the other church is wrong and that the people that don't adhere to that church are going to hell. And there's so much fear, there's so much aggression.
But watching her, and it's such a tragic character, you know from the minute you see her the first time that she's doomed.
All right, let's do it. Back to back with I Spy. Yeah, dude, let's watch I Spy again. Nah. So
Let's
guess who's not gonna pick out the movie next?
Dude, I didn't pick, Crepon picked that out.
Dude,
I did not
next
pick that out.
movie.
The very first scene was Angevine opening the box in the bus station. And I remember thinking, wow, this is strange, and sound speeding, and then I said action, and I heard myself say it, and that was the very first moment that I said, wow, there's no turning back now. We're making a damn movie.
Yeah, that's why Lightning Bug is so special to me, because I was, even though I was the lead actress on it, I did wear a lot of amazing hats that Rob trusted me to wear, and it was just such an amazing group. And in addition to him trusting me acting, he trusted me with all these different things.
Because he always said, car goes by and then the camera moves to the side.
And I had aspirations to direct, but I hadn't really jumped into it yet. So why don't you tell me what shots you need to get, and I'll go out and get them. And he was like, do you know how to direct? And I was like, yeah, of course, I could do this, And he totally trusted me to do it. The next day I showed up, and I remember I got 16 shots. And of the shots was, some opening montage things, and I remember I needed a moving shot of a guy riding a tractor for the opening montage. And so I'm like, great, got it. I got the list, I got the guys, we jumped in a van with the camera. We went out, and I was like, okay, so I know, and I saw a guy on a tractor, and we pulled over, and I was like, okay, I know that he needs to sign something, like a release form or something. So I hand wrote a consent form, and I ran up to him, and I'm like, sign this. And he signed it, and I was like, okay, get on your tractor. And we got this amazing shot of him riding by, and then we had to go into a chicken farm and get all these crazy shots.
Well, I met Rob on the show, and I watched his film Lightning Bug. I thought it was lovely. It's still with me. I'd say it's probably my top 10 movies, actually. I really loved it. I was really moved by it, and I thought it was very smartly directed.
I think Lightning Bug, you watch it and you can't help but see that it is a personal story. It was a really disturbing movie for me, actually, because it's one of these things, it's such a small movie and it's such a personal journey. You're not dealing with tons of people in body bags and all of that. You're really dealing with one real death in the whole movie. But that one death is so disturbing because you see the downfall. It kind of reminded me of Requiem for a Dream when I saw it the first time. You're watching these characters that you really like and you love and you care about, and they're making wrong choices.
Yeah, the scene where I'm hammered with Earl, I was drinking. Yeah, that was a good day. Actually, we shot in. They didn't have that much set design to do because apparently the trailer that we were filming in, it was repossessed, the trailer.
I had seen Brett, I didn't really know much about him, but yeah, we had amazing chemistry, and as an actor, when you start, reading with someone, immediately you know if there's chemistry or not. And Brett and I had chemistry right away. Obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is the first love scene I've ever had to do with Brett. And we were both just what are we doing? And we were in this church. But Brett is so amazing, and we had such an amazing relationship that we were both totally comfortable. And we found a way to do it where I think it did look authentic and real, and without showing or being gratuitous, we still got the communication across.
Ooh, sexy bitches are my favorite kind of bitches.
My mom knew the guy who owned the movie theater, and we couldn't afford daycare, so she'd drop me off in the morning and leave me there till she got done with work. And so I'd watch the same 2 movies over and over again. I'd see them 4 times during the day, and then she'd come pick me up. And I would sit there and watch these movies, and I wanted to be Indiana Jones, and then I wanted to be Han Solo, and then I realized that guy, it gets to be both of them. Who's that guy? Harrison Ford. He gets to be, and I start putting together what an actor could do. You could do all these adventures, you could do all these things.
For one of the shots that I had to do on the second unit stuff was to deface a church. And we were literally like standing on our cars, we like literally writing this stuff, and we're like, oh my God, we're gonna get killed. This is insane. But we got it, and it was amazing, and I thought the movie looked so awesome.
Rob's proven he can do beautiful kind of nostalgic films with Lightning Bug. He's proven he can do the gore.
Insofar as watching him make movies and stuff, I had always thought, and to be completely honest, that Lightning Bug should have been his 5th movie instead of his 1st.
What he said. You should do that, Rob. No, my wife loved it, and one of her favorite films. I loved it too. And I was actually very surprised because independent film, and guy's first film. He's never been a director, and it came out really. It moved me in many different ways.
But he just jumped right in. He didn't go, okay, this is a very dramatic story. I'm not going to make 3 horror films, learn how to shoot, and then come back to it. I'm going to do this because it matters to me.
But I didn't expect that this was the film that would be his first feature to talk about. I really, really didn't. I thought, genius at makeup effects would come out with his first film would be a sort of, in a way, what he ended up doing, that we ended up working on together, the Laid to Rest films, which were slasher movies that I think he kind of had an almost tongue-in-cheek view on as we made them. It was because it was what was expected.
I was very open with him about that in the beginning, but he did such a great job crafting this movie, especially with nothing. I mean, the shoot on this was as indie as you could possibly get. And for him to do that right out of the gate is what's, I think, the most impressive thing about it.
And when he started directing Lightning Bug, it's a better movie than a special effects guy usually cranks out for his first film. And you can tell when a guy who starts out in effects does an effects movie, because the monster is great and the movie is usually terrible. And in this movie, there is no monster. The stepdad is the terror of the movie, and that haunts you and scares you. And all the elements of a horror film can be reflected, but it's a gothic movie. It's a dark coming-of-age story.
I'm very proud of it. I think that every artist looks at a project and says, oh, I could have done better in that scene. I could have done better in that scene. I could have done this differently. But that's anything. I think that's what makes artists I think that's what makes them strive to do better. One of the great things about revisiting a film like this 7 years later, a film that we shot on film, Almost Human, my special effects company, actually has a digital wing since we created this film. Digital as in CG effects. So we were able to go in and actually CG a few scenes that I wanted to enhance. For instance, the first one I'm going to show you right now is a letter at the end of the film that Laura Prepon's character is reading, and it's supposed to be from her father. This box holds all of her father's belongings before he killed himself. Now, we never really say he killed himself in the movie. I wanted it to be sort of a subplot, just a small thing, one of her lies and one of her heartaches that she carries with her. But we were able to actually go in and fix the letter. I was never really happy with the writing on the letter on set. But we were moving so quickly I didn't have a chance to change it. You couldn't really read it. If you look on the left, the original shot said to Iva and Little Angevine, and I don't think anyone really knew what that meant if you could read it. So we were able to go back in and fix it digitally here at Almost Human. We were able to composite a new letter on top of this old letter. It actually has a little bit more of a clear indication of who it's from, and with the blood spatter there, hopefully you understand it's a bit of a suicide letter. So that was one example of something we were able to change that I was pretty happy with. Another instance of the digital technology that we were able to improve for the Blu-ray release is this shot here. Just a quick shot of Green's cut on his arm. We were able to add some more blood so that you realize the cut's happening a little bit quicker.
So many people have wanted to do this, merge digital technology with makeup effects technology. And I think the problem is a lot of people wanted to do it just to get by. I really believe the difference between what Rob is doing is Rob's doing it because he enjoys doing it. And when I look at the digital effects hybrids that he does, blending makeup effects with state-of-the-art digital effects, I'm like, finally, someone did it right.
I had driven my truck cross country from California to Alabama. I had this big 4x truck, and on the last day of work. I hadn't slept in a day or so before that. Then we worked 14 hours. And I remember just being delirious, and I was so happy that it was over. It was doing donuts in my truck in this wet mud grass before I left Alabama. And literally, I think I must have spun like 20 times, and there was mud everywhere, covered the truck. But that's a ridiculous story. I'm sure this won't even make it in there.
Because we all have different associations with lightning bugs, as Green does, but even their meaning changes over the course of the film, because early on, when he was a child, you know, and he's so delighted with them, they're such a foreign, this little dance.
Naming the movie Lightning Bug, it makes sense because it's a metaphor. It's the ability to glow.
The message of lightning bug, I believe, is in the metaphor of the lightning bug itself. This little, inconsequential, almost invisible living force that we all have inside of us that, when given the opportunity, can do something magic, can glow. And that's what the special effects world is all about.
It's no secret if you watch the film that it's an analogy to our main character and sort of the glowing personality that he has, and how he's sort of cooped up in this small little mason jar of a town.
Well, any critic that says that it's unrealistic, they probably have never been, they've probably never had something they were passionate about or believed in. I think that a lot of people play it safe in their life. They're scared of failure. And because of being scared of failure, they never really put themselves out there to fail. And I think that someone that's in this industry and has made it in this industry to even a modicum of success had to have put themselves out there and sacrificed a lot. I know for myself, to get where I am, to direct Saw 2, for example.
I don't know how you can move to Los Angeles. It's the devil's city.
I think the message in Lightning Bug is about knowing yourself. And if you know yourself well enough, and you know what dreams you want to achieve and the goals that you set for yourself, knowing that you're talented enough to do them, you should follow them.
I think that what it took for Rob to make this movie is exactly what the movie's about. I think that opposition and doubt from the outside has to be superseded by the belief in yourself. And to make the movie was exactly what the character Green had to go through in the movie. And I feel like all the opposition and all the need to believe in that inner voice, regardless of what's surrounding you, that's what got the movie made. That's what the movie's about. That's what Rob is about. That's how come Rob got out.
If there's a moral in there, it's follow your dream. That's for sure.
I think the moral of the movie is to stick to yourself against adversity. It's to be honest with yourself. And that's what I love most about the film, is it's not a horror or a thriller or anything. It's really a coming-of-age drama.
Anybody who thinks that the basic facts of this story are impossible or improbable or odd even must live in an emotional cul-de-sac. I don't understand how, like, if you have the desire to do this, it is an overwhelming and overriding dream. And you can, it's not so much that you leave things behind. This is where I think people get confused about the storyline. The story is not about a guy who leaves his hometown behind. It's about a guy who goes where he's wanted.